I actually was innovative enough, I've changed the topic that I was assigned because I thought it would be more important. That is, I might be the world's expert on barriers to innovation on what I've been through. How do I know? Well, I wasn't spending other people's money, I was spending my own. So I knew what the barriers were, and I had no debt, no partners, and no investors. So I was able to keep track of what was happening to me and my money. The innovation process actually goes from an idea to patent to invention and on to innovation. Having an idea doesn't make it an innovation. Having a patent doesn't make it, and thinking you have an invention doesn't make it an innovation. So here's the route that I found. You want to build value with the idea, so you have an idea, comes to your mind. Actually, if it comes more than once, there ought to be some validity to it. Then you get it on paper, then you get a functional prototype. And also note that the idea gets better over time. One thing leads to another, so they will build on it. The first idea is exciting, but over time, there'll be something else that adds to it. So when you go on the route to innovation, you're going to have to build some value, so you want to establish it. So you want to take a Google look through the literature and other ways, and then you have to make sure there's no prior art, because you'd like to own something. I can't sell you a house if I don't have the deed to it. So I've got to own something, and that means that I have to do a patent search, which, by the way, easiest way to do it is also by Google right now. You don't have to go to the patent office. So then you need to see that there's no prior patent. That's one thing. But interesting, that doesn't matter. Prior art isn't related to having there being a patent. It's if somebody wrote an article about what you're interested in and it claims that you had sodium and chloride and it made salt, and you wanted to do something with salt, the patent office will find out that's prior art. So that becomes an encumbrance. So then you need to form specific patent claims that can be defensible. So therefore, you better engage a patent attorney, because there's a whole lot more outside of your realm of knowledge that they will have that can help you. And then you, don't do it yourself. Review the prior art on your own, because you know most about the subject, but I found that you can either pay for it or do it on your own. And then you formulate your idea for the patent, but you've got to engage a patent attorney. In fact, right now in America, they will not accept a patent that an individual supplies. They'll send it back to you and tell you get a consultant. So is the patentable worth it? Are you anticipating you're going to have a return on investment? Here's the averages for patents. 3 to 5 year timeline, 41% granted, and 1% commercial success. Can I get any investors? No, and if it's your own money, you got to be thinking it over whether you want to take that kind of risk. So the discovery process, as I told you, is moves from the idea and along to innovation eventually. So the innovation must be confirmed by an issue of a patent. It's still not an innovation yet. And then the innovation, lots of definitions you've heard, they translate something that disrupts due to bringing new value, a proposition to the market, which basically I think means that you're going to have some commercialization. But the barriers remain. Unfortunately, like most things, it's not about money, it's all about money. And so time is also valuable, your time. And then you have to create a market which today has to be fast, easy, and exciting. If it isn't that way, you will not get any attention. And then you need a business partner. I don't believe you should try to do it on your own at the present time. I've done it on my own. I've owned a company. I would recommend you get a business partner. Why? Because you don't have management, manufacturing, marketing, sales, distribution, and very importantly, legal protection. Here's the innovation scale, and I thought it would be big enough to see, but basically, this has been publication of what the disruptive science has been over the years, and it basically in every field, it's tremendously declining. I should then digress and tell you, Chris Harner, a friend of mine now, works for the FDA, and the only things coming to the FDA in orthopedics in the last 10 years have been spine, nothing else, and absolutely everything else is a 510K, the easiest route, and that's why the suture business, suture anchors are so big, because they can do it on a 510K. So for starters, the failures to observe are the main thing you will not get into some kind of innovation eventually. And so lots of times you observe something, you don't think it's to be worthy. But I found that a series of one is better than a series of none. So if I've seen something one time and it seems to make sense and it's exciting, I'm not going to let it go. I'm going to allow myself to think about it more and see if that can be built on that. Mainly just observation, no science behind it, no good strength behind it, just made something that looked pretty interesting to me. And then you have to stay curious all the time. So innovation is out there waiting for the curious. Now, this is really amazing to me. There are lots of barriers to innovation. One, it can be you, because you don't want to spend the money, use the time, or you might lack resources and you can see there's no financial benefit. But what's interesting in the universities, I've learned from talking to chairmen, friends of mine, that because of the changes in the culture in the university, it's not any different than private practice. They want them to practice, earn money, contribute to the department, and they're not getting anything into innovation. And the other thing that happens in the university, and I've run into this person, I saw a person who had a really great idea that I thought it could be commercialized, and the answer was, not interested, because I'm making a living off getting more and more grants on my idea, and never wanted to come to fruition, just wanted the cash flow of that. And then the other thing is, and I faced this a lot recently, the rigid IRB, very difficult. So you have your idea development, your time, literature search, passion search, prototype development costs, attorney costs, drawings, the art, and the patent office, actions and responses. So I don't know how many of you have done patents, but you send in a patent, and then you'll have to wait for an office action. And so you're going to have to think about the return on investment of that. And the other thing that has happened recently, in 2017, they changed the tax laws. Before, if you had a patent and you sold it, it could get capital gains. Not anymore. You have to sell the entire patent to one entity to get capital gains. So you cannot sell it to one or two. It then becomes ordinary income. And so it's hurt the incentive of what your return on investment might be. So then, this is a huge barrier. Have any of you ever tried to call the government or get in touch with them? First of all, you get a computer response, series of multiple choices. Then, or nobody answers, or put on hold, please. That can last for up to 2.5 hours. Or then use the internet only. They give you where to go, and that turns out to be page 404, which says this doesn't exist anymore. Or you go to a page that says come back later. I'm not saying this is unusual. This is everyday practice, what happens. Or you must go to division XYZ or whatever it is, and when you finally contact that person, they've either retired, or if you do get a hold of somebody, they will tell you that they no longer have that responsibility and go over to ABC and see if they're the ones that are supposed to talk to you. And then, of course, scheduling a meeting will take weeks or months, and the response after contact can just go on 6 weeks, and in one case, I've got a 6-year one. So let's look at the regulation barriers. If you want to do a pre-market approval, the average is 9 to 24 years. Well, 24 years isn't too bad, especially if you're my age. I got a lot of chance to get something done. Or the average is 8.5. So therefore, most of the things now are 510Ks. So if you have an idea, make sure it looked like something before 1976 or 1900. You got a better chance of getting it through, because then it's only a maximum of 7 years or an average of 2.4 years, and a nuisance. So I just almost have to sit down to tell you this story. 6.5 years ago, I started to make an application to the EPA, because I had an antibiotic that I believe that could control MRSA and Pseudomonas in an operating room setting or sports setting. And so I made that application in 2017. The application was lost twice over the time of that. And then at one period, when they found it again, they wanted my last 4 years of tax returns, which I didn't understand, but I submitted them. That took another number of months for them to evaluate that. They thought I was fronting for a major company that would have to pay $400,000 to make the application rather than $2,000. So after that was over, we got through that, and then in 2021, they thought maybe I should start over, but my consultant rejected the idea. So then they deferred to 2022, and they said I'd have my answer at the end of February on 2023, which I did, but 2023, the last day in February, was the last day that you could respond. So when they told me what the result was, I also couldn't respond because the deadline was up. So then I learned that my solution had 16, do you love this story? I'm basing it until I don't get into it. So the solution had a 16% concentration, which I knew back in 2016 was a good idea, but then over the 6 years I learned something. It only took a 1% solution. So I told them it took a 1% solution. They said, oh, you've changed the whole thing. You have to start over and go to the end of the line. So we started over, went to the end of the line, got myself 2 consultants, and I should tell you, 2 other consultants would not take the EPA because they said, you're not going to have any success. And we don't take initial applications anymore because it's waste your time, money, and ours. But I got 2 guys that would do it, so we had our Zoom meeting, and what did I learn? I met a group of the most passive-aggressive people I'd seen in a long time, which were the people on the EPA side. And when we got done, I talked to the consultants, and I said, well, how do you think we did? I thought it was a little negative. They said, they were telling you that you're not going to take your application and you'll pass it no matter what you do. I said, well, I don't understand that. Yes, here's the situation, that they are a year behind in their work, so what they do when they meet with a new company, they show you and tell you they're not going to pass it because therefore they will not have another thing on their docket. So they wouldn't care what you discovered from their own perspective, they will stop you and not allow you to do it. So if you haven't seen any passive-aggressive people in a while, then this would be a good thing for you to do. So then I thought, oh, I'm working on this project, I've got to get it all. By the way, I don't know if you were at the meeting when I showed you that I have a US patent on a way to decrease the infections in infected total joints, and I got the Orphan Drug Division to approve the safety, and I just have to do 2 cases in order to do this. It's an outpatient injection, no risk, no nothing. So I went to the IRBs. No, go get a investigational drug. It's okay, investigational drug. To get that just takes $1 million to make your application minimal, 10 and $1 billion in 5 years. So then they said, well, maybe you can get an exemption. Next week, I'm getting another consultant to work on an exemption to see if I can get an exemption to do this. So even when it's a situation that it's everywhere in nature, every tree, every soil, every pond, every river, it's in the human diet. Your large bowel bacteria make a small amount every day. Very, very cautious that it's not dangerous, okay? So I have to go through the local IRBs. Who are they? They're not anybody that knows anything about anything. They're just about one decision they can do that's correct, don't do anything. Don't approve it. They know they can't make a mistake on that. So the other one is if you go to companies. I love this one. I have to start out and tell them, okay, gentlemen, I want to first know that I know you don't want to lose your job over Lanny's idea. So when we set that aside, can I now tell you about it? Because that's the thing that's going to be in their mind the whole time. And then the next thing is a company not invented here, NIH. Then they want to know, can I do $1 million in the first year? Can I scale a bit and make more? And can it be profitable immediately? I want it on the bottom line in 3 months. I'm trying to tell you, if you got something for the company, this is all they want, nothing special. And then they are risk adverse, they're slow and deliberate. They want to know that it's patented, are the clinicals in place, is it FDA approved, and is there a need? And then they have the legal fear because they're afraid that if they do something, somebody else or you might sue them. So if they are not interested, you'll never hear from them again. Because they have a history that if you propose something, even under an NDA, and they don't want to do it, they've learned that if they can respond to you and say they're not going to do it, there may be something in that results in a lawsuit. So the way you know they're not interested, silence. So the other thing that was a limitation for me, I didn't want to go broke. Ford went bankrupt 3 times and Edison twice. And so I wasn't interested in that. So all the monies I spent, although I spent millions, it wasn't anything that changed my lifestyle. So if I guess I wanted to be a real entrepreneur, I could have gone broke, but I didn't want to do that. Now, here's the next thing for you. Your time, effort, and demonstration. And so I remember in 1973, I was invited to Mass General. I did 10 cases on arthroscopy, including 2 temporomandibular joints, because the oral surgeon was interested. I was able to show him that I could see above and below the meniscus. Actually, I was pretty good technically, so I was able to do that. And then we did a hip and ankle, so it was a full day. And then the other thing is we birthed a dedicated facility so that we could disseminate the information in an observation suite. It was open to everybody. And we had ended up a dedicated OR suite. And we could show outpatient surgery. I think we had the first outpatient arthroscopy suite. But it was an opportunity to share openly with everybody what we're doing. And here's another big one that's happening right here in the meeting. One of the success factors is that you got to be available over time to promote this. So you see all the different people that I've talked to at different meetings, and you've talked to me, and we've both learned from each other. This is really key to passing your ideas by. I've had an idea from the meeting today that I passed by email to friends and also people here. Does that make any sense? And so that's something we have to do. And then you're going to have presentations, and one of the big things the company wants to know, can you get the podium? They got to have a champion doctor. Can you get the podium? And so where do you start? Local hospital, state medical society, AOS specialty. Actually get the podium wherever you can. Has to be something you're going to do. Then you're going to have to do publications. This publication was one that we did. We're able to show that we can control acne on the human skin of the anterior part of the shoulder, and published in the Journal of Bone and Joint Surgery. Of course, that if you're going to look at doing something prophylactically, you may not live long enough. So you have to find a way to do something treatment-wise and come back to the prophylactic way. So now about commercialization. I did it. I did it on my own. I wouldn't recommend it. I did my own companies, sold it in 202 to a major company. But it takes money, time, and risk, a lot of personal issues, and then I don't know how much equity you'll get out of it. So I think it's much better to, if you've got an invention, you got something, sell it to a major company, less risk, less time, you might get less equity, and then I could tell you how to do a contract that would be one that they will not offer you. So if any of you think you already got something on a contractual basis, I can tell you how to do a successful contract. So what are the potential innovation needs? Whoa, recognized problem. You got to solve a need. Ready market, patient acceptance, economic necessity. Here's the one I like. It's got to be mandated by money and mandated by government. Because if there isn't a mandate by money, either in the practice environment or otherwise, no success. Easily observable result. Regulation free. Got to have a reimbursement code. Well, that's not enough. You got to make sure that the reimbursement code will be paid for. So you could have a reimbursement code and still get nothing. So you want to make sure that the government insurance are along with it. So here we are, back to telling you got to have money, probably do something with the company. And then you got to make sure you got inexpensive cost of goods and readily available materials, and that you've got to have a good profit margin. And then frankly, I think you got to have government endorsement or funding to do something. So here's the perfect innovation. Politically expedient, politically initiated, government funded, legally mandated, government enforced, company held harmless, and a large profit. You've all heard of it. That was the COVID vaccines. If you can get a deal like that, that is a sweetheart deal. So Joseph Beuys told me that if you're not, and I was his fellow, 1966, if you're not successful socioeconomically, you will not be successful medically. He didn't mean overcharge, he meant that you've got to be effective or efficient. So I think there are two opportunities that I think for the Codman Society or the members here somehow for innovation. And here's the problem. The doctors are presently all labor, not management. And so who makes more, labor or management? You've been wondering why that, I'm telling you the answer. So on the internet, there are two things that the government has projects for, and I've listed them there and I can give them to you later. But they've got billions of dollars, one for creating the replacing the artificial total joint with a biological one, at 1.5 billion out there, and it has to be in by July 3rd, or one with artificial intelligence. Here's the one for July 3rd, which you might take a look at if you have ideas in that area. But here's the thing. I put this up years ago. There's a war in medicine, the ammunition's dead, and the doctors have none. It's sad. So the opportunity, in my opinion, is for real intelligence, not just artificial. To get artificial intelligence, you got to have real intelligence first. And so I'm suggesting they might think about that. So back, 1990, because of a database that I had 4,500 knee cases, an extensive database. I was able to look at that and create the predictive power of all the questions. And the patients came in, they did automated history for me. I made them my employee. And I then developed two things. One was a way to have free knee diagnosis. By the way, it was never successful, as we had before its time. It was a way in order to a patient could go on that, and by answering 20 minutes, they could find out at 80% reliability what their diagnosis is. And but it attracted contracts, and it was time and cost efficient. It wasn't much of a moneymaker, but I believe artificial intelligence will revive this. So this led to a pilot study. What I'm trying to point out to you how important data is. I recognized, because of the data that I had, I knew what my outcomes were, and I could insure anything. And so because of the huge database, I could take a risk based on my known outcomes. So I was able to give a financial warranty on this pilot study for 100 patients from an HMO. I put $25,000 in escrow in the bank and said that I'll cover all reoperations or any complications, and except ones that were related, like anesthesia or cardiac arrest, which is an exception. And the rewards are based upon predictable outcomes. And I was able to show them at that time that compared to existing reimbursement systems, that I could offer a price at half of what Blue Shield was paying in Michigan at that. I went in with the hospital. I made more, the hospital made more. And on 100 patients, the HMO saved almost a couple $100,000. Why? Because they even had an orthopedic surgeon that didn't know the difference between a frozen shoulder and rotator cuff tear. He would operate on all the frozen shoulders. So doctors are the ones that know the most about how to control healthcare, but unfortunately, no one was interested in this. And in the Arthroscopy Journal, when I published it, I had 2 pages by 2 different doctors saying, if this ever happened, I hope I'm not in practice. Well, they aren't now. So I intended to have the surgeon in charge, but now, of course, it's gone. It's bundled care and it's controlled by insurers and not doctors. But I still think there's an opportunity out there. So here's my suggested solution for either the Codman Society or somebody else who has a lot of database. It could be done by a society. I believe you guys, if you all got together in an equitable way, that your specialty group could create an electronic medical record with a common database. You'll be able to determine diagnostic, not only determine, but ensure that this is the only way any insurer, any doctors in the future in this area can do it. Diagnostic criteria, outcome factors, surgical indications, establish the value of any treatment, and you'll have a searchable database. Why? Because experts like you have value. Database has value. Expert opinions have value. You can establish a gold standard off of a database, and you can sell the method to other groups, or if you can't sell it legally, you can have people be associates and pay to be associate and therefore get to use the product. So you actually are going to create some value for yourself in perpetuity if in fact you can get together. So nowadays, here's the perfect partner, the federal government. Why? Because they make the money and they make the mandates. That makes it easy. So right now, they have digital health tools. You can go on BARDA and see and get a grant to do that. People can fund it if you can get together. So there's a potential commercial value in the software. How do I know that? This company just paid $10.5 billion for something I was just telling you about. So the Codman Society, here's my business plan. I'm not a businessman, but this is my business plan. Oh, by the way, never take advice on investment from a doctor, okay? But member investment is an option. The data is owned by the investors. There's no patent. By the way, it's very hard to patent data or software. You just spend your life on it. And there's no regulation for member use. Software is not for sale. I told you how to do it. Establish AL for the diagnosis, establish surgical indications, measure outcomes, and then form a self-insurance company and sell associated memberships in order to use the right of it. Final word, be on alert for evolutionary ideas, but those will be revolutionary, not evolutionary, but revolutionary ideas. Thank you very much.